John. How are you,
Hello,
buddy?
Brandon. Hello, hello. How are things out there?
What's going on? Is that a Rubik's Cube behind you?
It is.
That's awesome. Are you good at that? You ever solve it, or did you take the stickers off and like put it on and pretend that you solved it?
No, it's a shelf ornament.
It's a shelf ornament,
It's
man. I
like
remember
it's like
that.
it's like it's like having books on your bookshelf you've never read.
Actually, it's funny. Funny you say that. I just read something that 58% of people have bought books, and those books will never get read. And the reason is that the book is actually the expression of the future self of what they want, as opposed to that. So they're like, oh, maybe one day I'll take this book and I'll curl up next to the fire and watch this, and then I'm going to be awesome. And it's like, no. So, anyways, shelf ornament, right? But Rubik's cubes. Okay. Let's dive in. What are we going to talk about today? So, where is my application processed? All right, guys. I don't know where we're going to take this one, John. Let's talk about GCMS, and let's talk about how applications can move through the world or through the system, and how you can actually get updates on your application or find out how your application is going through the system. How's that? What do you think?
Sure, we should probably split it between temporary residence application and permanent residence application. Should we start with temporary residence first?
Sure.
Okay, and then
There's no script, buddy.
we should also split it between in Canada and outside Canada. So let's say you're applying for a work permit and you're living in Nepal, right? So when you apply for a work permit and you're resident in a certain country in the world, it goes to one of Canada's what they call regional processing centers, which are basically large Canadian uh, consulates, embassies, high commissions, which are responsible for a general area. Now, for example, using the Nepal uh, example, the application would be processed in Delhi, the Canadian High Commission in Delhi, and it would sit there for weeks or months until it's done. A decision would be rendered, and if it's approved, then you get your TRV put in your passport and a little letter given to you, which you show to CBSA upon arrival in Canada, and they print out your work permit for you. Fairly
So
simple.
I got a question for clarification.
Yeah.
It's a low ball, John. So is it always going to be processed in Delhi if I'm in Nepal?
Aha, you sneaky guy, Brandon. So what Brandon is alluding to there was a change in the regulations. And we're going to get a little bit nerdy here, folks, talking about Canadian immigration regulations. There was a regulation called R11, and there was a subsection of it, and it said if you are living in Nepal, your application will be processed in Delhi, more or less. It didn't say that exactly in the regulation, but it said certain visa posts are responsible for certain regions of the world. Your work permit will be approved there. About 2 years ago, the government decided to change that regulation, and now it says basically at the discretion of the minister. Why did they do that? More and more applications became electronic applications and done online. Thus, the ability for the application to be shunted around Canada's immigration system improved. So now, as Brandon can attest, our individual in Nepal who submitted his or her work permit application online may find it being processed in Warsaw, in Poland. It could be processed in Manila. It could be processed at any Canadian consulate or embassy overseas. Sometimes it's even processed in Canada at the Canadian Processing Center in Edmonton. We're all inside Canada
Or
applications
Ottawa?
or Ottawa. But basically, what has changed is the instead of it being done at a specific location, the minister has decided I'm going to give myself the authority to do it wherever I want. Now, these are the electronic applications.
Okay. I'm going to say something about that real quick just to provide some context. So, everything John said, totally agree with. The Global Case Management System is GCMS, is the computer system, and it's exactly the way it sounds with the name. It's the Global Case Management System. So your application can move around. One of the things that's taken into account, however, is local knowledge, for instance. So, for instance, depending on where an application's processed, the officer should have local knowledge of certain factors that should be in that application, and that should be taken into account. Um, I like to think that it is taken into account, but sometimes there's some things that are evident that may or may not show that. Anyways, so your application can go pretty much anywhere in the world. And this was for immigration or IRCC to be able to balance caseloads. All right. Now, with that said, did you want to highlight any differences with respect to?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's an online application. If our individual in Nepal to carry along with this goes to Kathmandu to the back office in Kathmandu and submits a paper application,
Visa Application Center,
the
VAC.
Visa
Yeah.
Application Center. Procedurally, it's unlikely that it's going to be sent to another visa post. Generally, paper ones remain with the closest regional visa office. So, that application more than likely will remain in Delhi and be processed in Delhi.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't find anyone's doing paper applications anymore. Do you?
Rarely. Yeah.
Okay, cool. The only other thing I'd like to say is that we're going through a bit of an evolution in terms of the online portals and whatnot. So things are changing a little bit in that respect, but we'll see what that looks like over the next little bit. Okay, so how about PR applications? What do you,
Oh,
do you want to?
we'll just say one more thing. One more thing about temporary resident applications. If you apply for a work permit, study permit, or an extension of any type, and you're inside Canada, it's all processed by the Canadian Processing Center in Edmonton. That's all I have to say about that.
Mhm. Okay.
So PR. Okay. Huh. PR
Can I make this
application.
one easy?
Why don't you start off with this one?
Okay. So, depending on the type of application, it can go to different processing centers. Some of them are paper-based, but a lot of those things are going online. If you're doing, say, a spousal application, for instance, it'll get shunted into Mississauga. If you're doing a parent-grandparent sponsorship, it'll go into Mississauga. If you're doing an overseas spousal, it'll go to CPC Sydney, Nova Scotia. So there's different things. If you're doing a paper-based PR application for a caregiver program, that'll go to Edmonton. So a lot of times with PR applications, for instance, they generally will end up in Canada. Okay, is that fair comment? Would you say
Yeah. And that's fair comment.
initially? Because then you can have applications. Remember, we were talking about local knowledge. You can actually get a letter or a notification says, "Oh, we've transferred your application over to a different visa post." I just had this with a parent-grandparent sponsorship a little while back, and it was being processed in Mississauga, and then it was shifted over to Manila because again, there were issues or questions about somebody who was in the police, like they were in the police force, and they wanted to look at they look at police, military, government positions, and that would actually require some local knowledge. So they want to verify different things like that. So that's probably the reason, and it wasn't surprising that that stuff happened. So normally with a PR application, I would tend to say that they're processed in Canada initially, but then they can be shifted to an overseas visa post where there's local knowledge required. Would you have anything to add on to that?
No, that's pretty much correct. It's and it's a great thing. I'm always happy to see fewer and fewer paper applications.
Yep.
It generally means faster processing for individuals. Because again, imagine you're managing the Canadian immigration system and you see, oh boy, Delhi is getting a lot of inventory and the staff is working at capacity. Oh, we see Bogota or Warsaw at not so high capacity. Let's send some files over there to be processed.
Yeah.
So it can be a win-win for everybody involved.
Plus, if you send over a paper-based application anyways, you have to employ somebody there just to scan it into the system and whatnot. So like anybody who knows anything about outsourcing, get the client or get somebody else to do the work for you, and then it cuts down on the time. So that's exactly what the government's got you working for them.
Yes.
Okay, so now we've got all of this laid, John. Let's talk about how to follow up on the application. Right. So if you've got that, how do you follow up on an application?
Well, you can apply at the Canadian through the inquiry portal, we call it, the CSE portal, and you can update, like if you have a change in address or there's something you want to, a document you want to add to your file, you can do it that way. But another way, and it's the way we do it for our clients, but Brandon can again confirm with this, is we can do an access to information request. And what that is you pay $5 and you submit a request, but the IRCC send you the GCMS notes on the file, and then when you get the GCMS notes, you can see the intake date, you can see any actions done on it, you can see any officer notes, so you can see what stage it's at, and if there's any concerns on the file.
Yeah. So the IRCC Web Forms, the Web Forms can actually go, depending on the type of application, you can go to the general one. And then there's like, say, a sponsorship, there'll be a drop down. You can hit the sponsorship and then the type of sponsorship. It'll get steered to and attached to the file based on your UCI number and the file number. The UCI number is your unique client identifier, which basically is your number that will follow you for the life of your time with immigration, and it's valid 9 years past your last interaction with the immigration department. And apparently they get recycled after that. And then there's the file number, which obviously is the type of file that you're doing. So you can always follow your application up. And that's why personally, outside of the paper-based and the couriers and all the other stuff that can go on with that, that's why I like the online applications, because when you submit the online, then you get the file number and then you can update things on the file. And then you can kind of track the file and keep things going and know what the file number is. So if you have to do the interactions. The other thing is too, is that, excuse me, some visa posts have specific web forms. So like you can type in IRCC web form, and then you'll go to the web form. It'll say what type of application. Is it processed in Canada? If it's not processed in Canada, then it's overseas. And then you can choose that visa post and it'll go directly there. That's how you can follow up on an application. So that's one way. You could send an email to, some emails are there, some will go and some will not. Do you have anything to say about following up on an application? Because I have a few things that I'd like to say. Do you have any advice on that, John?
Well, try and put in as a most comprehensive application as you can.
Yep.
So you don't have to follow up. That's my first comment. If you do have to follow up, don't follow up asking a visa post or an officer at the end of it, any updates? Any updates?
What's going on with my file?
Don't do that. Just your request will just be deleted or ignored. If you want to find out about the status, do an ATIP request and contact the visa post if you need to inform them about a significant change or even a minor change to your application, a change of telephone number, of email. It's always incumbent upon you to have accurate and up-to-date contact details. Brandon can tell you, we've unfortunately seen things in the past where somebody has missed a deadline and they go, well, I never got the letter. And I go, well, what about your email address? Did you keep your email address up to date? And they go, no, I didn't. And so it's important to do that.
Yeah. The only thing I have to say about following up in the application, and I like, what's the update on my application? What's the update on my application? I know some cases back in the days when people were sending faxes to the processing center, and they were literally sending in, what's going on this? And they would get stuff back like, do not contact this office again, like in big letters, right? Like, so my advice to you is what I tell my clients is that sometimes they go into this black box, right? And that's what happens. It just goes into, some place and it filters through. But there's certain things like, first off, are you within processing times? Now, processing times are online, and I'll get clients asking me to follow up and I'm like, no, right? Because we're still within processing times, and it's either going to be ignored or I'm actually just going to sully my good name with the immigration particular office or your name, right? And yes, I know they don't take that into account, but if you've got some guy that's annoying and stuff, it's like, oh, this guy, the guy that's emailed us like 100 times, like, yeah, I'll get his file done, right? And it's human nature. And as much as I say that, they can't really do, like, Let's be honest, humans are humans, right?
Yeah, but there are tools available to you if you think that your application is taking longer than is normal, to make an inquiry with IRCC and say, hey, and it says right in the IRCC portal, do contact us if you're exceeding normal processing times. And so,
Yeah.
from
And
time
then
to time, Brandon and I see this with clients, and then we do start getting on their case politely, pointedly, and saying to them, you are exceeding your own processing times. Is there something wrong? Is there something that we need to provide? Um, you know, so on
yeah.
and so forth.
Um, I know that we're going to chat a few things about what happens when you get a refusal and different things, and we can talk, not in this, but I know that I want to talk about this with you, and we've talked about it in past, but we could talk about, I'll just enter in there, something that you can do is if something is taking super long, there's something called mandamus, right? And that's another tool. That's another follow-up tool, but it's kind of you're hitting it with a stick. And what that is that you're going to federal court and you're filing an application there for mandamus, which is an instrument, and not to get into the definition simply is basically an order to act, right?
Yes.
Where, you're basically going to a judge in Canada and saying it's taking too long and I want my stuff decided.
Yeah,
So,
make a decision. That's basically what mandamus means. Is
yeah,
get off your backsides, IRCC, and make a decision one way or the other. Just make a decision. And through COVID, we're starting to see more of this, of files taking, a really, really long time. And the conversation in our community recently has been, are we going to have to, on behalf of our clients, help them retain a lawyer and go to federal court to do mandamus? It is an issue.
oh man, we're going to talk about that. I got so much to say on that, but I'm going to stop here. Do you mind if we stop here?
Yes, of course.
I'm just mindful of the time there. Listen, guys. So yeah, if you want to follow up on an application, there's a few different ways. You got the IRCC web form or the email, as we've discussed. You've got, judicially, if you really need to do that. But I would strongly recommend that you get some advice on that before you start pulling that card. Plus, you're going to need some help with your filing with federal court. And also just watch the processing times, et cetera, et cetera. I would suggest that you don't get this on, forums and different things, because there's so many different factors on that based on, timing, based on where it's being processed, based on your situation. We talked about if one person, was a police officer, for instance, that's going to make their process a lot longer because there's additional security checks that need to happen. So it's really an individualistic process. If you need to follow up, you can do that, but use it sparingly. And a follow-up could also come in the form of an update. And that's if I have one last thing to say, be strategic with your follow-ups, but maybe if you're doing a follow-up, you could say, oh, by the way, my address has changed, here it is, because that will have to be dusted off and added to your file at some point. They'll have to dust it off and put it in there, and hopefully somebody would look at that. But don't be like, what's going on with my file? Any updates on my file this week? Anything like that? You're making the system go longer, and you're possibly making somebody unhappy. You have any last comments there, John?
Nope. That's the
I'm
way to
really
do it.
talkative today, buddy. Sorry about that. All right, let's pack it up. Guys, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to us, mysecondpassport.ca. Yeah, if you enjoyed this, please share it, subscribe, turn on notifications. I think is what
Keep
everybody
watching our
says.
videos.
Yeah. Actually, I like doing these. John and I are, we're colleagues, and I actually like John. He's a lot of fun.
I'm glad you like me, Brandon.
Yeah, we spend so much time together, buddy. Anyways, let's leave it there. Take care, John. I'll talk to you soon. Enjoy BC, buddy.
Okay, bye-bye.
See you, bud. Bye, guys. Take care. Have a good week.